You are listening to WCAT Radio, your station for quality Catholic programming. Your selected program will begin right after a word from our sponsor, GroupM7.com, a web design and hosting company. Log on to GroupM7.com today and let them know that WCAT Radio sent you.
You know, my finest childhood memories was the Saturday morning movies for about 4 bits each. My brother and I could split a Coke and a big box of popcorn and watch movies about Tarzan, Jane, and their Amazon River adventures. Well, maybe that's where Jeff Bezos took his name. His Amazon.com is now the largest online retailer in the world. I'm Michael Malfood with Group M7, the oldest and largest website design firm in East Texas. And here's my point, and as usual, it's a good one. If your website is modern and up-to-date, mobile and search engine friendly, it matters not whether you sell a product or provide information about your goods and services, your sales justifiably will increase just like theirs. The world uses the internet. We can improve your website and your email. Look at our giant portfolio at GroupM7.com. Since 1995, there's only one web and there's only one group, and it's us. It's Group M7.
You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to The Open Door, a show based on the words in Revelation, "I have left an open door before you, which no one can close." This is WCAT Radio's longest-running show, which opened the door to the radio station in October 2016. It's currently offered by Jim Hanink, Mario Ramos Reyes and friends, and remains open to the love of God in its call to build a culture of life and a just social order through the panel's discussion of the Catholic social teaching principles of solidarity, subsidiarity, and economic democracy. The Open Door also explores nonviolence, distributism, and communitarianism. So join us at the Open Door, where you too can be part of the conversation.
Jim Hanink here, with fellow panelist Christopher Zehnder. Today, we reflect on the fall of Afghanistan. We do so taking into account the long-standing military-industrial complex and how political leadership tends to respond to it. We also consider how the platform of the American Solidarity Party, the ASP, addresses contemporary warfare. Our special and welcome guest is Eric Anton, a former member of the ASP National Committee. He is a husband and father of 3, as well as an Army veteran. As always, let us begin in prayer. Come, O Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and enkindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. O God, who has taught the hearts of the faithful by the light of the Holy Spirit, grant that by the gift of the same Spirit we may be always truly wise and ever rejoice in his consolation. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. Eric, what are your thoughts today on the Taliban triumph in Afghanistan?
Disappointed but not surprised. The only really surprising thing was the speed. I gave the I'm going to use acronyms, government of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, the previous government, JAROA. I gave them about a month personally before total collapse. It happened much faster than that. But that's really the only surprise.
Anything to add to that?
It is a human tragedy in many respects, and in some of the other commentators that I've been paying attention to, in regards to this. It's sort of like we've been putting like a person on life support, someone who's been ill for a long time, for 20 years. And after pulling the plug, this is, we watched them die. This is a lot of those same feelings. It wasn't a surprise that this would have happened, but it's still a tragedy nonetheless.
Have you been able to speak with any of the people that you served with about this?
Yes, none that I served with in Afghanistan, but other currently serving and veterans who have been to Afghanistan. We've had some talks about this. Generally, no one's surprised. Everyone's, obviously saddened by this and kind of hoping that the army would have lasted longer, but no one's surprised.
Now, where were you in Afghanistan, and at what point?
I was in Kandahar. I was in southern Afghanistan, so Kandahar, Zabul, Uruzgan, in 2011 to 2012, and then I went back to Kandahar in 2014. First time I was deployed was with the 82nd Airborne when they took command of the Regional Command South. I served as a staff officer with the Afghan National Security Forces Development Cell, focusing on the Afghan Army. My personal area of expertise was the logistics system and the 205th Corps of the Afghan National Army. The second time I went, I was the senior brigade logistics officer at Brigade S4 for the 16th Combat Aviation Brigade, and we provided aerial support for what we thought then was the final retrograde, the removal of U.S. forces from southern Afghanistan and southwest Afghanistan.
Are you, or have you recently been in contact with any of the Afghans that you knew when you were there?
No. The Afghans that I did work with were generally much senior to me, so we had any interactions were very formal. Because of my position the first time around, that's the only time I really had interaction with the Afghan forces. Very limited. It wasn't long-term personal interactions unlike some of the others. I was a staff officer for the regional command, so I did do training and stuff with their Afghan army senior leadership, and I trained a lot of the trainers who then would go down to the lower level units, but I wasn't deeply embedded with them.
Did the officers that you met, did they seem professional?
A few did. A few of them were good. Many of them were not. And when the 82nd took over, we took over from, I forget now. I honestly forget who we took over from at this point. But one thing that we had was in the systems, we'd write up dossiers on every significant person, key leader that we had interaction with. And when the 82nd took over, we purged a lot of those dossiers of negative information, specifically corruption, ties to the drug trade, possible interactions with, at that time, it was a whole variety of insurgents. It wasn't just the Taliban, because they're very distinct groups that were coming over. But most notorious one was General Razik of the Afghan National Police. He was the Kandahar provincial chief of police. Everyone knew he was crooked. Everyone did. But when 82nd took over, we purged the negative information. We made him out to be our best friend and ally, and lots of, that's the sort of thing that happened.
Now, why were you told to purge that information?
I did not purge it, but I did read it because I had to keep up on the key leader engagement stuff. I did not have control over it other than inputting some certain data, but I did notice that these things changed right around when the ASIC officially took over. If I were to make a guess, is to demonstrate progress, that we are reforming these people, we are fighting corruption, we are making progress. And if you look at the Washington Post publishing of the Afghanistan papers, or if you talk to anyone who has served as a junior officer over there, we were told to show progress, making PowerPoint slides turn from red to green. And so that's what was demanded of us, and that's what they got. So it's a culmination of 2 decades worth of basically false reporting.
Now, wouldn't the people who ordered the purging be putting themselves at some risk in that the support that they would receive would be based on what was false?
Why? They'd rotate out in a year. On the ground, they'd rotate out in a year. The generals and the politicians would be able to show progress. And, we pulled out, and we'll pull out this year, but that a full retrograde is not the same thing as truly pulling out. Yeah, we pull out officially, but we leave, 2,000 people there in support. So basically, we just garrison the country for forever. And we just keep kicking that can down the road because it's a money spigot. And quite frankly, it was good training to rotate Army units through. They got live combat experience, which we can't really get back home. Works out that way.
So in a way, if you can fool enough people for a year, you'll be able to fool another batch the next year.
Yep. And depending on the unit, depending on what each unit commander would want, you might get more truthful reporting, but then it would change whenever a new command took over. The standards and the expectations would change. So we weren't fighting for, it wasn't American Army fighting 20 years of war. We fought a one year war 20 times.
And do you imagine that the honest leaders ever confronted the purgers?
Why? That it would reflect negatively on their evaluation reports to not show proper progress.
So even if Smith didn't alter the data, Smith benefited from altered data.
Yes.
Okay, we're off to a cheerful start here, but you've written about the background sorts of considerations. And Christopher, could you take us ahead? You're muted, Chris.
Sorry about that. Still technologically challenged. You recently offered an essay for the American Commons, titled "The Military-Industrial Complex Persists Because Politicians Face No Consequences." What were the main arguments? Could you sketch those for us, please?
My main arguments was that, say, a politician advocates for the use of military power. They face no personal consequence of the use of using that power. They may or may not get voted out of office, 2, 4, 6 years down the line, often for other reasons. But they don't but unless they have a family member personally in the fight, they don't face personal consequences. They don't face any sense of I did this. I ordered soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines into combat. So that's that disconnect between the many people have written about a civilian military divide. So, and many people have said that America was never at war in Afghanistan. America was at the mall. The military was at war. It's that sort of sense where you could have people, you can have, presidents like George W. Bush, President Obama, President Trump, and, President Biden. Soldiers, we voted for and we sent soldiers to fight. No skin off my back. I might lose an election, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to get shot. I'm not going to feel the pain. I'm not going to, sit for days out in the forward base in the mountains with, exposed to the elements, things like that. And so my solution, as it were, was that, okay, if you are someone who, voted for the use of military force, going out advocating for the use of military force, you should personally have some sort of consequence to that action. My recommendation was, okay, for 40 days a year for the rest of your natural life, you personally go and volunteer and serve, sweeping graves, tending to veterans, visiting families who've lost a loved one to combat or from suicide, treating those who have PTSD, visiting those veterans who are now homeless on the streets because of the damages that war has done to them. It's not I'm going to go fundraise or I'm going to go make a stump speech that no one cares about. It's you personally go show your respect, go show that you understand what you did. You understand what you voted for, and understand that your vote had consequences, real human consequences. And it's not something that you can just pretend that is off in the distance. It's happening to someone else. You personally need to go make recompense for that. Either to say thank you that you fought in a just war, and I'm going to show my respect to you who have suffered because of it, or I am so sorry you fought for something that wasn't unjust. I'm going to make some reparation for that.
Yeah, such a thing. Of course, it'll never happen, right?
No, of course not.
Who would pass such a law? Short of that, though, how could you overcome the military-civilian divide? It's granted. When man's running for office, most people are not thinking about the wars, and they have really no reason to think about the wars, because when they watch the news, I remember when the Gulf War started back in the early 90s, how reporting had changed on war, very different from the reporting of the 1960s. It was pretty much all government propaganda. So the people they just assume that we're over there fighting a great and good fight, and that everything is just and good and fine. And then they have their other concerns that they're concerned about. Oftentimes important concerns, but nevertheless not having to do with war. Some people have suggested having a draft again, so that everybody would have some skin in the war. Something I wouldn't necessarily espouse, but would you think how else would we overcome this divide?
Well, I have mixed feelings about a draft myself, especially a military one, not just a national service type thing. I have mixed feelings about it, to say the least. But one writer and thinker that I greatly respect would be General Smedley Butler, whose book/speech War is a Racket, which I drew a lot of inspiration from, had a recommendation that he was, of course, talking at a time when there was a draft conscription. And his recommendation was, before a soldier was conscripted into the army, you'd conscript the war industries, you'd conscript the politicians, who would serve in wartime as, the essential leadership class of the United States, where they'd all receive the same pay as a soldier serving in the trenches. So that's a way where, say, anyone who contracts with the military to supply weapons, services, what have you, your pay scale needs to reflect 1-for-1 military pay scale for enlisted, from the entry-level worker to the CEO. All right. Say something that your shares are nationalized. You now serve for the benefit of the nation. I mean, these are things that, obviously no one's going to vote for in any seriousness because they benefit from the status quo too much. But the only other way other than purely symbolic personal things would be to take economic costs out on the profiteers, the contractors, those sorts of things. Or, there's really no other way to get around it that I can see anyway.
Do you think there's any way to excite the moral conscience of America? Now, our friend Jim Hanink here was members of the 1960s in the Vietnam War. And we have a picture of, at least, of that there was a vast public outrage against it. I don't know if it was entirely on moral reasons, but a lot of it was moral reasons. Is that just a pipe dream, that, or is the culture of war just so embedded in the American consciousness?
I would say that the culture war is too embedded, and the media consolidation at this point. Well, as the old saying goes, if it bleeds, it leads. And the media has economic incentives to champion war, just the same as a weapons contractor does, not just for the stories that they get and the access to politicians that they get in order to support them. The sorts of mutual support networks apply to the elites as well. And the fact that, as with, propaganda is just choosing which picture you want to show. That's what the media ultimately does. They choose which pictures they want to broadcast. Independent media is largely marginalized, if not just completely ignored, if not just completely gone at this point. There are no major independent networks out there. Journalists are almost completely supporting of cable TV networks. If they're an independent one, they're going to be writing for, some far out newsletter like I do. And they're largely ignored except for a small group of people who are already predisposed to not be entirely on board with with what the mainstream is putting out there. So if you're talking about a major groundswell, I don't see something happening unless something so major, so it can't be ignored thing, and one of the major networks breaks ranks. That's gonna be the only real way to do it.
Yeah, I know. I live in rural Ohio, and I run across actually a lot of families that have sons and daughters in the military, and it's we have a Memorial Day festival every year in this little village of 400 where I live, and it's a pretty old festival, I guess, but there's a gathering around the village hall, and then everybody walks to the cemetery and decorates graves, that type of thing. But the message is always, especially this year, was American soldier has always fought for freedom of America. And that's the message that keeps getting out, is that every one of our wars is done for noble reasons. And it always falls back on that these wars are being fought to preserve even basically the liberty of the people at home. So, yeah, I know, I agree. I don't see how we can get beyond that.
And you're not going to be able to convince the average soldier about that either. I mean, when I served, I was wholeheartedly in support of what we were doing. I thought we were doing the right thing. It's just the good war, Afghanistan, not Iraq. I admit I was much happier to be serving in Afghanistan than I would have been in Iraq, because that was at that point the bad war. And that's what I grew up with. That's what I was enculturated with. I didn't really start questioning narratives until I started, actually serving over there. And even then it was more of a how we're going about doing things, not a why are we doing this in the first place. That didn't come until much later. All right. So the average soldier is every soldier is going to complain about things, but rarely are you going to find, soldiers that are going to say that what we're doing is wrong. But the whole affair being wrong, not necessarily the instrumental tactics.
If I may, I have one more question. Harkening back to something you said earlier, you looked upon this withdrawal from Afghanistan as being a tragedy, and then you used the analogy of a patient on life support. I can think of at least two scenarios where a patient on life support, or maybe three. One is they're placed on life support because they can recover, and we're just giving them a little bit of help until they can recover. Another is they're on life support, but they're not going to recover. We know the organs are shutting down. We know we're just doing things like we're doing extraordinary things to keep the body alive. I guess the third might be is that at one point the patient could have recovered on life support, but it's been on life support for too long, and therefore it's hopeless. Those three scenarios with Afghanistan, do you think there ever could have been, given all the dynamics that go into historical reality like Afghanistan, do you think there ever was a time when we could actually have turned this thing and made it a success rather than a tragedy?
My professional opinion would have been, I do not know enough. My personal opinion might be, there might have been a time, if I were to suggest, it would have probably been when the Loya Jirga, the Grand Council in Afghanistan that was assembled after in the wake of the initial invasion and the collapse of the Taliban, was when they suggested reinstating the Afghan monarchy. Because it was a governmental system with a family that had at least some semblance of legitimacy in Afghanistan, and some of those nostalgic historical ties because they were overthrown by the communists and their supporters, which was a foreign support thing. So there maybe have some old loyalties. I think that would have been the most likely scenario. I don't know enough about all the other dynamics to really say if it was good or not, but that was very early stages. And when we started talking about, nation building and creating a Western democracy in a place where the understanding of values and what even words mean is very different. At that point we were just propping up someone that was going to pass away or devolve into warlordism when we left. And in many respects, the Taliban takeover is, in many respects, not the worst outcome. A probably more dangerous outcome for the people of Afghanistan would be a return to the warlord years, where everyone was fighting everyone, and you look at the same thing, very similar thing happened in China after the warlord years, and then the civil war after the fighting with Japan between the communists and the Kuomintang. People accepted the communist takeover in many respects because they didn't want to return to those bad old days. They still remembered the chaos, the devastation, And if the current government, the Kuomintang in the mainland, was because of a lot of the problems of fighting those long wars, that long war with Japan, many of them were hopelessly corrupt. Though you had good eggs in there, the system was so badly damaged that it couldn't recover. So, and I see a lot of similarity between that and what happened in Afghanistan.
Christopher is always noting my age.
What's most charming about you?
Back before the Vietnam War. I want to go back before the Korean War. I want to go back before World War II to World War I. There were a number of, for want of a better term, progressive people in the United States who thought that Woodrow Wilson would really be a significant president. And it turned out that when he became president, we all came together with World War I. And Wilson acted pretty much the way his opponents at the highest level would have acted with World War I. And in fact, it was during that period that the American Civil Liberties Union came about. And their original focus was on people who had conscientious objections to participating in World War I. And our American Solidarity Party, on some occasions, reflects the spirit of and some of the ideas of the Catholic worker movement. Well, one of the sparks in the Catholic worker movement was a fellow named Ammon Hennessy. And Hennessy was imprisoned for war resistance during World War I. So this sort of thing is something that seems to be repeated again and again and again. And we're often talking about today critical race theory. We could talk about, I suppose, critical military theory. And what we mostly need to do is to be informed and educated, and of course not focused on some one dimension. But the notion that the history of wars is rewritten practically as it happens is something that there's no reason to be surprised about. Now, that said, I'd like to comment on 2 points that you mentioned that are not nearly so important, ultimately, long haul. But one columnist, I think it was David Brooks, I'm not sure, said that perhaps a way to have Americans understand what was actually going on in Iraq and Afghanistan was to very directly shift the funding of it to a kind of national gasoline tax. And the tax would nationally go way up, and no one could afford to ignore it. Now, whether it was Brooks or not who said that, it did seem to me to be, how about, logistically innovative effort without the background of a draft to connect everyday people with the costs, the financial costs, and only that of the war. And I think of that because we're thinking of ways, and you suggested ways to make us see the personal dimension of the war. And you said it wouldn't work for us to just discuss such matters as you do in I don't know what the adjective was, an off Broadway newsletter. what was that off Broadway newsletter that you had in mind?
Well, you mentioned my essay in the American Commons, and
so that's it. That's it. All right. Well, American Commons connects us with American Solidarity Party. And if we looked at the platform of the American Solidarity Party, which is, after all, our party, there are a number of directly pertinent points in the platform pertinent to our immediate situation and to what's led up with it. I wonder, Eric, you were on the National Committee, and the platform is intimately connected with what's going on in the National Committee, at least at the time of its writing. I wonder if there's anything you'd like to say about, here it is, foreign policy and defense policy. Any thoughts about our platform and whether it connects with what we've been seeing, doesn't connect, or somewhere in between?
I mean, if you're talking about justification for initial entry, then yeah, the platform has a lot to has something to say. As difficult as it is to really truly define just war and then figure out what a just war is, its general bent is on military as a last resort, non-intervention if at all possible, general reduction in overseas military footprint especially. So those are all good things as far as stopping a war from necessarily happening or intervention from happening in the first place. If you're talking about conduct of the war and a lot of the problems that I saw and I've spoken about here, then it has nothing to say. It's just the way it is. And that's just the way it is when it's unfortunately one of those things that happens when you have civilian control of the military, because military people, brass, especially ones that are politically appointed, they want to make their civilian bosses happy. So they pad the statistics. That's just human nature in many respects. You can look at the same thing with police forces across the country in terms of padding statistics, either saying that we're making more, we're like overcharging people or undercharging people in order to make their statistics match the political wants of their civilian masters. This is not to say that civilian control of the military is bad. It's a good thing, but understand that it is a cost, it is a human response to the system that is going to happen. And the Solidarity Party has no platform on that, and really it shouldn't, because that's more internal policy of any given organization. But I've written another thing in the American Commons, I forget exactly what it was called, but it was talking about the general goals and policies, the national strategy, and that is something that the American Solidarity Party could comment on, and any party platform could comment on, because national strategy, what are the goals of why do we have a military? What is its purpose in the world? That is something that is largely ignored by the civilian population and completely ignored, except for the occasional soundbite by politicians running for office. Right now, the U.S. military has almost 24 stated priorities, not in an order list. So there's an old saying, like if everything's a priority, nothing is. And if you can't measure your achievement towards this goal, how can you know if you've achieved it or not? So I wrote one. It was a little while back. I forget the exact name of it. But basically, we need to reduce the national strategy goals to 3 to 5 distinct, very concrete things, such as prevent invasion of American soil. That's a fairly easy thing to measure, right? Maintain freedom of the seas for trade and communication. Those are things, that's something that is easier to measure than, say, I forget one of those, to leverage all of our power in order to achieve strategic dominance in these fields against our strategic enemies. I mean, a lot of the times these goals that are written are gobbledygook, and you can't measure success or failure. If you can't measure success or failure, why are we having a discussion? I talk about how in terms of spending, the army is much too big in order to meet these things. And if you have a very large hammer, you're going to want to use the hammer for everything. It's human nature. So you need to shift spending from the army to, say, the Navy, to maintain freedom of the seas and to maintain defense of the homeland, and reduce the ability and willingness of our domestic policymakers from using the military as let's go send them in and they'll solve everything. So that's the sort of thing that a party platform can have impact on. National strategy, military spending, force structure, organization. Basically, what is the purpose of the military that we have? That is something that the ASP can comment on.
Understood. Let me read one bullet point from the platform, and I think we could have a few things to say about it in light of what's happened in the last week or so. Our military involvement throughout the world over the last several decades has left some regions dependent on the relative security the United States provides. While this arrangement is not desirable in the long term, we cannot simply retreat immediately from some regions where a rapid exodus would cause further instability. Indeed, a deliberate withdrawal is needed to ensure that American allies or clients are not left isolated and at risk by our departure. A reduction in military bases abroad should occur as part of this policy shift, except for those required to protect diplomatic missions or to meet explicit treaty obligations. Is that good to have in the platform? Does it come close to describing what we haven't done, but we should have done?
When you're talking about, again, when you talk about with goals, as noble as they may be, if we're going to kick the can of withdrawal or reduction of force overseas to an unspecified point in the future, and how do you measure, how do we know when enough is enough? How do you measure that? I don't necessarily know the answer. But as far as the general reduction of bases, that'd be great, because there's a lot of places in the world where we don't need them. But in many respects, we need to understand and realize that if America can't be the world's policeman, and if it is the world's policeman, it can't be Derek Chauvin. All right? It can't be the one that just kneels on the neck of whoever is supposed to be, helping. We need to understand that the military should not be the first resort. It should be the very last resort. The primary mission of the military should be to defend the homeland, not to go abroad. Okay? But I do need to get going soon, so.
Okay. Last thoughts, Christopher?
Yeah, I think I really like your suggestion that we have to address the purpose of the military, and I think we have whatever purpose we do have in the United States. It's almost like we become sort of the replacement of what the United Nations was supposed to be. We become the guarantor of world peace, and under that, I think under that image, we actually really pursue very chauvinistic goals, and that's a dangerous thing. Like you were saying about. We don't want to withdraw right away. Well, when do you withdraw? It's the sort of things. How do you measure it, and how do how do you keep from the powers that be continually falsifying the measurement in order to maintain a presence? So if we could get people to understand what the purpose of the military is, then I think there could be maybe even some resistance to certain kinds of wars, and even maybe a reduction in the size of the military.
All right. We especially thank Eric for joining us. He's about to move halfway across the country with his family. So I'm going to end perhaps a little early, but I'm going to end, as we always do, with the gospel for today, which is from Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "Amen, I say to you, it will be hard for one who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I say to you, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for one who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished and said, "Who then can be saved?" Jesus looked at them and said, "For men, this is impossible, but for God, all things are possible." Then Peter said to him in reply, "We've given up everything and followed you. What will there be for us?" Jesus said to them, "Amen, I say to you that you who have followed me in the new age, when the Son of Man is seated on his throne of glory, will yourselves sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has given up houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or lands for the sake of my name will receive 100 times more and will inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last will be first. Come, Lord Jesus, come."
The mission of Holy Apostles College and Seminary is to form faithful witnesses of Christ. Year after year, the prestigious Newman Guide has recommended Holy Apostles for our academic excellence and steadfast fidelity to the magisterial teachings of the Catholic Church. We are also fully accredited and the leader in Catholic online learning. Our students enjoy the unsurpassed flexibility to study on their own time and anywhere in the world through asynchronous engagement. Holy Apostles is dedicated to the relentless pursuit of truth, which allows students in all academic programs, including undergraduate, graduate, and personal interest, to formulate a coherent worldview based on both faith and reason. The study of the liberal arts also develops and refines key competencies associated with career readiness, such as critical thinking and problem solving, clear communication, collaboration, and a strong work ethic. The tuition rate at Holy Apostles is one of the most affordable in the country. Yearly tuition for a full-time undergraduate is under $12,000. Students at Holy Apostles can graduate with minimal or even no college debt, which enables them to live out their calling as faithful witnesses of Christ without heavy financial burdens holding them back. Please visit www.holyapostles.edu/admissions for more information. The fall 2021 admissions deadline is Friday, July 23rd. Classes start Monday, August 30th. See you soon.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.